What if I told you that Johnny Depp, one of the most recognizable and talked about stars in the world, has been carrying a secret for more than 60 years? Imagine living in the spotlight since your 20s, with cameras following your every move and still holding on to something so personal, so deeply hidden, that the world never quite noticed. For decades, fans thought they had Johnny figured out. They thought they knew him through his characters, his music, his scandals, and his victories. But what if I told you that behind all of that, behind the fame, the chaos, and the countless headlines, Johnny was guarding something he couldn't hide forever? It almost sounds impossible, doesn't it? When you're one of the most photographed men on earth, when your every word in court makes headlines, when your red carpet pictures are picked apart for details, how could you possibly keep a secret that long? But Johnny Depp has always been different. From the start, he never played by the rules of Hollywood. He never fully belonged to the system that made him famous. He didn't chase the spotlight in the same way other stars did. And maybe that's why he managed to hold on to something the world couldn't see. If you've been following Johnny's journey, you know it's been full of extremes. The meteoric rise from a small-town kid to a global superstar. The cult following for his quirky characters. The darker years filled with controversy, heartbreak, and battles that played out in front of millions. Through it all, Johnny has been painted as everything from a misunderstood genius to a reckless troublemaker. But no matter how you see him, you probably feel like you already know his story. After all, it's been told and retold so many times. In magazines, tabloids, documentaries, and even courtrooms. But here's the truth. What we've seen of Johnny is only the performance, the show, the side of him he was willing to let us watch. Because the real Johnny, the one with fears, with regrets, with hidden thoughts that never made it to the screen, he's been keeping that side tucked away. And that's the secret that's slowly beginning to surface. Think about it this way. From the time Johnny was young, he's always been on the run. As a teenager, he ran from his small town and into music, desperate to find escape in the sound of his guitar. Later, he ran from music into acting, almost by accident, when fate pushed him toward Hollywood. And once Hollywood embraced him, he ran again from the typecast of being a heartthrob, throwing himself into strange, eccentric roles that nobody else dared to touch. Even when he found massive success, like with Pirates of the Caribbean, he seemed uneasy with it, almost like he wanted to disappear again. And when you look closer, that pattern of escape starts to make sense. Because Johnny's never been comfortable, living in the version of reality the world tried to trap him in. Fame, money, adoration, all of that may have looked glamorous, but Johnny was always slipping away into private worlds he created for himself. That's the heart of the secret. For more than 60 years, Johnny Depp has been quietly recording his life. Not on film, not in interviews, but in ways most of the world never got to see. Through pages of notebooks, through sketches, through unsent letters and private writings. Boxes filled with reflections, confessions, and even apologies written late at night when the cameras were gone and the world was asleep. That's where Johnny has always been most himself. Now, here's the twist. Most people assumed Johnny's creative outlet was his acting or his music, and in many ways, it is. But the truth is, acting was never enough. Music was never enough. Those things belonged to the world. His real escape, the part of himself he could actually protect, lived in ink and paper. It lived in the art he made when nobody else was watching. And if you think about it, that explains so much. Why does Johnny disappear for months at a time? Why does he prefer staying on his island in the Bahamas, away from the chaos of Hollywood? Why does he live out of hotels instead of settling down in one giant mansion like most celebrities do? Because for Johnny, it was never about the glamorous lifestyle. It was about protecting the space where he could still be himself, that hidden world, that private truth, the part he was terrified the world wouldn't understand. There have been hints about this for years. Some of his closest friends have talked about his late-night writing sessions, about the journals he guards like treasure. Co-stars who worked with him have mentioned how Johnny was always scribbling in notebooks between takes, lost in his own thoughts. And then there are the small slips Johnny himself has made. In one rare interview, he admitted, almost without realizing, "My reality is in the pages. I never show anyone. That's where I live." Just think about that. A man who has spent his whole life in front of audiences saying that his reality doesn't exist in the spotlight. It exists in pages that no one's ever read. It's powerful, isn't it? And strangely relatable, too. Because even if we're not Hollywood stars, we all have pieces of ourselves that nobody else sees. The parts we hide in journals, in sketchbooks, in thoughts we never say out loud. For Johnny, those parts weren't just hidden. They became his survival, his way of making sense of a life that was often chaotic and overwhelming. Psychologists say it's common for people in the spotlight to build private worlds. It's how they protect themselves. But with Johnny, it goes deeper. His private world didn't just protect him, it defined him. The man the world thought it knew, the eccentric, the rock star, the unpredictable rebel, was really only the surface. The real Johnny was in those hidden writings, those sketches nobody saw. That's where he poured the side of himself he never let anyone else touch. And here's where it gets even more intriguing. Rumors have started to spread that some of these writings might eventually see the light of day. Imagine that. Imagine Johnny deciding, after all these years, to share even a fraction of the truth he's been keeping. It wouldn't just be a headline. It would be history. For the first time, we'd see Johnny not as Jack Sparrow, not as Edward Scissorhands, but as himself, raw, vulnerable, unfiltered. How would that change the way people see him? Would fans fall even more in love with the man behind the characters, or would the mystery that has always surrounded him start to fade? That's the gamble, and maybe that's why Johnny has been so careful, because once you reveal the deepest part of yourself, you can't take it back. But let's be honest. Johnny is 62 now. He's lived through more than most people ever will. He has walked through fire and walked away with scars the world has seen and scars it hasn't. He's tasted the kind of success that few can even imagine, worldwide. Fame, blockbuster hits, sold-out concerts, red carpets, and legions of fans cheering his name. But he's also tasted the bitterness of public shame, humiliation, betrayal, and being dragged through headlines that tried to reduce him to a caricature of himself. He's battled through heartbreak that broke him down, scandals that shook his career, and long, dark chapters where even he wasn't sure if there would ever be light at the end. And yet, through all of that, Johnny is still here, still standing, still creating. At this stage in life, he doesn't owe the world anything. He doesn't need to prove himself to critics, to Hollywood, or to people who only know him through tabloid stories. He's already given more than enough of himself on screen, in music, and even in the courtroom. Which is exactly why this moment in his life might be the perfect time to open a door he's kept locked for decades, the door to the truths he has been carrying privately, the ones only he knows in full. Think about it. When you're younger, when you're in the middle of the storm, it's harder to be vulnerable. It's harder to admit the things you fear, the mistakes you regret, or the softer sides of yourself you don't want the world to crush. But when you've lived through 62 years of chaos, triumph, heartbreak, and healing, you see life differently. You start to realize that sharing those hidden parts isn't weakness. It's strength. It's a way of finally letting go of the weight you've carried for so long. Johnny Depp has always been seen as the rebel, the eccentric, the one who never fit the Hollywood mold. But maybe the truth is that he wasn't just rebelling against Hollywood. He was rebelling against the idea that the world deserved every part of him. Maybe he knew deep down that some parts needed to stay hidden until the time was right. And here's the thing about Johnny. He's not the kind of man who does anything halfway. When he acts, he transforms completely into a character. When he plays music, he throws his whole soul into it. When he loves fiercely, even if it costs him everything. So if Johnny ever decides to reveal his hidden side, to show the world those pages, those thoughts, those truths he's been protecting for over 60 years, it won't be a half-hearted gesture. It will be raw, real, and all-encompassing. But why now? Why at 62? Maybe it's because the pressure is finally gone. He's not chasing the kind of roles that once defined him. He's not battling for a place in Hollywood's inner circle. He's carving out a life that's more his own, choosing smaller projects, diving deeper into music and art, and surrounding himself with people he trusts. When you no longer need validation, when you've already proven everything you need to prove, that's when you find the courage to finally reveal your most vulnerable self. And for Johnny, vulnerability is not something he shared often. For decades, he built a wall of characters, costumes, and eccentricities to keep the world at a distance. The eyeliner of Jack Sparrow, the pale face of Edward Scissorhands, the odd mannerisms of Willy Wonka, these weren't just performances. They were shields. They let him express parts of himself without ever fully exposing the core. But shields get heavy when you've carried them for decades. And eventually, every wall starts to crack. Now picture this. Johnny sitting in his home or maybe on that private island he loves so much. It's late at night, and the noise of the world feels far away. There's a glass of wine or maybe a guitar, leaning against the chair. In front of him is a notebook, worn and filled with pages. And on those pages is the Johnny Depp we've never truly met. Not the actor, not the rock star, not the courtroom figure, but the man. The son, the father, the lover, the friend, the flawed human being. How powerful would it be if those words ever made their way to the world? If we finally got to see Johnny through his own eyes instead of through roles or headlines? It would be like lifting the curtain on decades of mystery. Fans would finally understand the pain behind the performances, the inspirations behind the characters, the regrets he never spoke, and maybe even the dreams he never chased. It's not hard to see why he kept that world private. When you've been judged and dissected for most of your life, you learn to protect what matters most. But now, at 62, maybe Johnny realizes that the harshest judgments are behind him. He survived the worst storms, he's endured the ugliest headlines, and he's come out the other side with fans who still love him, with friends who still stand by him, and with an audience that still hangs on his every move. So maybe now is the time. The time to stop hiding, to stop running, to finally let the world see not just the performances, but the person. Because here's the truth. Mystery has always been part of Johnny's magic. But vulnerability could be the part of him that makes people love him forever. The fascinating part is how this moment connects to all of us. We may not be movie stars, but we all know what it's like to hide pieces of ourselves, to keep certain thoughts in a journal, to sketch something no one else will see, to write a letter we never send. We hide them because we're afraid people won't understand. We hide them because those parts feel too raw, too fragile. But what if those are the parts that matter most? What if those hidden truths are the real us? That's why Johnny's secret feels so important. Because it's not just his story, it's a reflection of everyone's story. And seeing him open up at this stage in his life would remind us that it's never too late to stop hiding. It's never too late to share your truth. When Johnny was younger, he may have feared what people would think if they saw the real him. But at 62, what does he have to lose? He's not that young actor trying to land his first big role. He's not that tabloid target fighting to survive another scandal. He's Johnny Depp, the man who's already lived through 1,000 lives. And if anyone has earned the right to be fully himself, it's him. So the question is, will he? Will Johnny open that door he's been guarding so carefully? Will he finally let us see the part of himself he's been keeping in notebooks and sketches all these years? Or will he keep it private forever, choosing to leave the world guessing even after he's gone? Whatever happens, the fact that we're even asking these questions proves how much he still captivates us. Johnny Depp is 62, but he hasn't lost his ability to keep the world watching, waiting, wondering. And maybe that's his greatest power, the ability to remain both known and unknown at the same time, to be a legend, but also a mystery. To be adored, but also misunderstood. And maybe one day soon he'll decide that it's finally time to pull back the curtain, to let the world read those pages, see those sketches, hear those truths. And when he does, it won't just change the way we see him. It will change the way we see ourselves, because Johnny's secret isn't just about him. It's about the hidden worlds we all carry. And maybe, just maybe, his courage to reveal his truth will inspire us to reveal a little of our own, because maybe, just maybe, Johnny has realized that holding everything inside isn't strength, that sometimes sharing your truth, even if the world doesn't fully get it, is the most powerful thing you can do. And let's face it, if those writings ever come out, they won't just tell Johnny's story. They'll resonate with everyone who's ever felt misunderstood, everyone who's ever hidden their real thoughts because they were afraid of being judged, everyone who's ever built a private world because the real one felt too harsh. In other words, it wouldn't just be about Johnny anymore. It would be about all of us. So the question is, if this secret finally surfaced, how would it change? The way you see him? Would you admire him more for being human? Or would you feel like the mystery that made him special had vanished? Whatever your answer is, one thing's for sure. Johnny Depp's story is far from over. He may have spent 61 years hiding his truest self, but the fact that we're even talking about it now means that the walls are starting to crack. And when they do, when those hidden truths finally spill out, it will be one of the most unforgettable moments in Hollywood history, and maybe that's the lesson here. That no matter how famous or successful someone becomes, they still carry secrets. They still wrestle with the parts of themselves they don't know how to share. Maybe Johnny's 61-year secret is just a reminder that we all have sides of ourselves the world doesn't see. The only difference is we don't have millions of cameras pointed at us while we keep them hidden. So next time you think you know a celebrity, or anyone really, remember Johnny's story. Remember that what you see is never the whole picture. And maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe it's those hidden truths, those unspoken words, that make us who we really are. And now, I want to ask you, if Johnny ever decided to share those pages, those private thoughts he's been writing all his life, would you want to read them? Would you want to finally know the man behind the characters? Or do you think some mysteries are better left unsolved? Whatever. You believe one thing is certain. Johnny Depp's secret makes him more human than ever. And maybe, just maybe, that's why we've loved him all along.